to kickstart Session 1, Innovation and Technology, Water Talk. It is our honor to have Mr. Erdo Elver, President and Chief Executive Officer, Siemens Limited, Hong Kong and Macau, to deliver his keynote presentation. Mr. Elver, please.
Thank you. Am I supposed to stay behind or I can stay here? I can stay here or use the space here. Good. Thank you for your introduction and great to be here. I have joined many events virtually, but this time I am joining live, so thank you again for organizing and inviting me. I am representing Siemens, the leading German technology company for digital solutions for city infrastructure, industry, but also energy management in cities and transportation. So I will talk about technologies. You might remember Chairman Kevin in his speech said just around 20% of companies are in fact utilizing the technology to reduce their CO2 emissions. So I am here to share with you what we can all do with technologies. And of course, that is for us one of the major levers as the path to achieve net zero. Let me start with a statement of our founder, Mr. Werner von Siemens. He said once, I won't sell the future for short-term profit. Means that what I'm doing today should be good not only for today's generation, but also for future generations. So that is something what we say, in fact, sustainability is our guiding principle since the foundation of our company in all areas. But why does it matter now? If you see the pictures I am sharing with you, I guess you will understand. In fact, we have to do more to avoid that those catastrophes are happening more, which is caused by climate change, respectively by global warming, which is caused by CO2 emissions. So again, sustainability is our guiding principle. And in fact, we are one of the leading companies and we have a strong track record on sustainability. And we also see sustainability equals business. So we can provide technologies to our customers to help them to run their operations in a more efficient way with this reduce their CO2 emissions. And we have defined a very ambitious sustainability program, what we call DEGREE. And DEGREE has those 6 dimensions, which is in fact mapping the ESG with decarbonization and resource efficiency. We are addressing the environmental dimension. The 3 other dimensions with ethics, employability, equity, addressing the social dimension, and of course governance, addressing the governance dimension. And I will in the following, of course, focus on those 2 which are very much relevant for CO2 reductions and share with you what we all done. In fact, we have reduced considerably CO2 emissions of our customers, but also of ourselves. We as Siemens set the target to become carbon neutral by 2030. And you see also some numbers. We have helped our customers, in fact, last year to reduce around 88 million tons CO2. And in 2021, around 36% of our operational CO2 emissions has been achieved. And in fact, today around 78% of our total energy consumption is from renewables. With the target by 2030, 100% from renewables, 100% using EV cars, electric vehicles, and many more. So those are just to share with you some numbers. And as said, as we have started with this around 2015, said become carbon neutral by 2030 and reduce 50% by 2020, and this has been already achieved, in fact, overachieved. You might ask what we have all done, and this is something which I'm happy to discuss later on in the panel. And you see we have reduced our own CO2 emissions considerably by, well, making our operations more efficient, by optimizing our building operations, optimizing our operations in manufacturing. So those are, in fact, one of let's say, major levers. So again, we are deploying our own technology to run our operations more efficient, and with this, of course, reduce our CO2 emissions. And as I said, around more than 70% of electricity is used from renewables. And we have invested into, well, projects to reduce our CO2 emissions, and they're already paying off, and they have already reduced around 15% of energy costs. So those are just some measures to share with you what we have done in our own company. Once again, 2050, we will become carbon neutral, and we are good on track on this. Now, more importantly, you see on this chart, around 70% of CO2 are, in fact, caused by the industries which we are addressing with our technologies. Those are mainly city infrastructure, like buildings, transportation systems, but also industry. And it has been also proven that digitalization has the potential to optimize the operations in industry. And you see around 60% of manufacturing tasks can be automated, of course, improving the operations with this, reducing the CO2 emissions. Infrastructure, for example, 80% of life cycle costs are coming from the operations. This can be reduced by 20 to 30% by deploying technologies, similar with mobility transportation systems. And we say, in fact, we are providing technology with purpose to our customers to drive sustainability. And here, one of the, well, key technologies which we are providing to our customers are saying connecting the real world with digital world, and with this helping them to design their products with, again, software solutions in a virtual world, design their production, and also later on optimize it. And here we are supporting different verticals. I just pick up a couple of which are relevant for city infrastructure. As you see, smart grids, buildings, transportation and logistics, and you name it. And this is what we do with our Siemens business platform, Siemens Accelerator. This has been already launched, in fact, mid of this year, and we have last year also an official launch here in Hong Kong. Siemens Accelerator provides a platform where we are providing a comprehensive credit portfolio of, again, different products, which are software but also hardware products, linked to the cloud, providing a platform where we can develop applications together with our partners, and that is, in fact, one of the key elements, continuously growing partner ecosystem, and providing a marketplace where we are connecting customers, users, and building communities like it happens on platforms and ecosystem to further drive their development. So how we do it? We have different design principle. It shall be interoperable, flexible, open, provide as a service, mainly software as a service, but also, of course, ensuring cybersecurity. You might know, well, if we develop products or build buildings or infrastructure elements in the past, we have done it in a more, let's say, structured way, in a sequential way. Today, we are providing tools which help us to do this in a more interactive way. That is also what we call data-driven. I can utilize data, software solutions to optimize, again, my design, my product design, production design, and later on, if my product runs, I can use the performance to optimize my production, respectively, the product. This we call also horizontal integration. And of course, we also linking the physical world with the virtual world by the vertical integration. As you see in my picture, we have field devices, sensors, and their controllers, and then we have the IoT devices, and at the end, the cloud. So that is where we are leveraging the full potential of data for, again, different sectors which we are applying. And of course, as I just mentioned, utilizing the power of digital twins by combining real and digital worlds, and that is also what we call Siemens Accelerator. I have 5 minutes left, and I'd like to share with you a couple of examples in the following. So, but important, I think this is also Chairman Kevin said, we have to accelerate things. And you have seen in my second picture what is happening around the world. And I will share with you the following 3 examples from 3 different industries: manufacturing industry, infrastructure, and also from mobility. The smart manufacturing is a very simple example. We are, again, providing to many of our customers in different verticals product solutions. We have recently made a cooperation agreement with Coca-Cola to digitalize their production lines. With this, help them to optimize their operations. And you see also on the slide, around 7,500 tons CO2 reduction has been achieved by saving around 10 million kilowatt hours of electric saving per year. So just one example what the potential has digitalization, respectively digitalize your operations. So that is one example. My second example is from the city infrastructure. You might have also heard in my other speeches, if I talk about city infrastructure, the major potential comes through connectivity and digitalization. Connecting different city infrastructure elements, connecting buildings with smart grid, and optimize the operations. I have an example where I have a small clip. I'd like to share with you what my colleagues have done in a small city in Austria called Seestadt. Let's hope that the clip works. One more click. Yes.
With Aspirin Seestadt, we want to showcase how to create a successful climate-neutral district. Not as a prototype, but as a vivid, all-encompassing system that can be adapted to individual requirements. Essentially, this requires smart technology for interconnectedness, strong partners, and the will and know-how to share our findings with others. We can rely on Siemens in all 3 respects. Together with our partners, we have created a district that responds flexibly to the energy need of its residents. A district where buildings do not just obtain energy, but also produce, store, and feed energy back into the grid. For the first time, we are creating an interactive world in which buildings, storage facilities, and networks interact in complete symbiosis to increase efficiency, sustainability, and resilient urban development. With an open invitation to anyone working today on the city of tomorrow. The path to climate neutrality is already possible today. We'll gladly show you how it's done.
Right, so that is, in fact, a real case, and we have done it in Austria, but also in Germany and some other cities. So it is, in fact, not the future, it is today, it's present, we can do it. I'd like to also share another example, what my colleagues have done in Europe, providing, again, battery-powered train to one of our customers. And again, here's the goal, to optimize the energy consumption, reduce the CO2 emissions. And also you see here, this is a very, how to say, optimized operation, around 20 Myrio plus B, that is how this train is called. Battery-powered trains are partially electrified. With this, running around 25% with less energy, around 25%, and of course, 95% of this train is recyclable, which is also important in the whole life cycle of products. I have just shared with you a couple of examples. There are, of course, much more, but time is limited. One important aspect I like to address before I end my speech is the whole value chain of production. And in fact, our goal is related to Scope 1 and 2 emissions. Scope 3, where you have to involve all your suppliers, is another area where we are working on. And there is an initiative I'd like to share with you what we are doing also to get this under control. There is also a small clip. Give me, please, another 1 minute.
If you want to decarbonize industry, the best place to start is with yourself. The challenge, up to 90% of CO2 emissions are not generated within your company, but along the supply chain. To get transparency about your product carbon footprint, you'll need actual data from your suppliers and their suppliers and their sub-suppliers. Conventional static PCF reporting doesn't provide this. It works with average figures. Some suppliers are disconnected, and some simply distrust the process. SeaGreen enables efficient communication by connecting you with your suppliers for frequent data updates, trustworthy and confidential. Suppliers can have their data certified independently and use TSX blockchain technology to keep sensitive information confidential while sharing verifiable proof with their customer. SeaGreen is a management tool that supports data-driven decisions to reduce product carbon footprints and accelerate decarbonization. Dynamic PCF, actual, confidential, and verifiable.
All right, so that is another example what we will do again to get also the Scope 3 emissions under control. So with this, I have shared with you what is all possible with technologies, and again, we are providing technology to support our customers to optimize their operations, reduce their CO2 emissions, and that is what we provide, in fact, technology to transform the everyday, because we believe that sustainability is not only good for business, but also good for people and planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Elver. Please be seated. I think all of you have got lots of takeaways from Mr. Elver's sharing. Moving on to our second keynote speaker, we are pleased to have Professor David Burkhardt, Director, Sustainability Net Zero Office, the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Professor Burkhardt, please.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share my thoughts from HKUST. Thank you, Simon, and thank you for everything. I want to start with, let's see. Okay. Yeah, from the beginning. Okay. The first thing I'd start with is, this is our team. I am with the Sustainability Net Zero Office. We were the Sustainability Office, but we've added Net Zero because Net Zero is something worth emphasizing. Net Zero, not just in carbon, but in water and in waste. We're really looking for a future where we don't have to offset things. Everything can be replenished naturally. That's when we really hit that net zero. I also wanted to share this because you could see, one old guy in the top left, but the rest of them are very young people, and this is their planet that they're taking over. We incorporate dozens of students into our work so they can get a hands-on experience and they can understand exactly what it means to be able to work on these kinds of issues. And they will be taking over at some point. So let me start by just conceptually looking at where we're coming from. And the topic of the talk is walk the talk, right? We do a lot of talking. Are we walking the same way? In other words, are we doing the things that we're talking about? So one way to visualize this is on the right-hand side, you'll see our vision for Hong Kong, or vision for the planet, maybe. It's powerful, it's dominant, it is filled with grand challenges, such as net zero carbon, net zero water, net zero waste, really hitting that vision for the future that we want. But of course, we can't really quite get there today, so we do what we can, and that's on the left-hand side. And the left-hand side is what's achievable. And what is achievable would be energy efficiency, new buildings with green certifications like Beam Plus, Platinum, retrofits, retro-commissioning, and so forth. And so what we find is that when we put the two of them together, there is a little bit of overlap. And this overlap is quite powerful and it's important for us to be able to focus on. But we also notice that there is a bit of a gap, because the long-term vision is very powerful. It includes disruptive changes, big things that have to go from one step to the next, aggressive step change goals. But when we're focusing on the immediate, then we tend to be doing incremental goals. In other words, we're changing light bulbs, we're improving pumps and other equipment. And so it's marginally inching our way forward. But what we find is that there is a large part of this grand challenge that's still missing. And so when it comes to this talking or walking the talk, we can see what business as usual looks like, which does incrementally get us forward, but we're missing out on the walking the walk, which is how do we get to the grand vision for the future. And the reason why that's important is because we can undermine our own efforts as we go forward if we don't recognize that step change and incremental are not the same thing. So for example, we're very proud that we have a number of new buildings. They're all BEAM Platinum. That is our standard. And you can go through the whole checklist and be very proud of what you've achieved in terms of integrated renewables that are built into the building, the energy consumption that's significantly less than the base building. But essentially, if we look at it from the grand vision perspective, what we really see is we're building less brown buildings. They're not really green because they do still have a 98% connectivity to the grid, 30% better than a base building, really should be described as 70% additional energy that's going onto the grid. So we do need to think in terms of how do we start to break the paradigm that we have and really look at how we build into the future. So how do we do this? Well, we started a signature program called the Sustainable Smart Campus as a Living Lab. And the Living Lab, I think, is a very important key piece to this because when we're looking at the vision for the future, what I'm going to argue is that we need to be able to kind of disrupt things, right? And not just new technologies that allow us to continue business as usual with the least amount of disruption. We may need to have significant disruption so that we can take that next step change forward. So this is the campus as a living lab. Let me just give you a little illustration of what this looks like. So many of you may have seen this. It's a water fountain. It is a functional item, a big brown or a big silver box. It's not very attractive, but it's functional. It provides the service that you need, cold water on demand. But it's not smart and it's not sustainable. Here's one that was developed by one of our Hong Kong entrepreneurs called the Well. It is smart. It has an LCD screen. It has sensors. It's riddled with sensors and meters. I can tell exactly how much water is going through that at any time. I can see when the filters need to be replaced because it'll send an SMS text. Or if there is a problem with the flow, it will send a note directly to the facilities so that they can fix it. And of course, it's very attractive, which makes it much more appealing. So what are the key strategies? If we use that as our model, what are the key strategies for walking the walk? Well, first of all, we have to measure everything. And I think I'm very glad to come after that great speech that we just heard, because data and digitization is the key, I think, for almost everything that we're going to do. Big data is going to be very helpful for us. Number two, depending on where we are, we can always bring our constituents into the conversation. Right? So one part of breaking the paradigm is going away from the idea that facilities people have to make all the changes and everyone else can live their life as normal. And the way that we take the step change is we bring people into the conversation, allow them to be part of the conversation and also contribute. And then third, prepare to fail. And of course, we fail a lot. Which is actually a good thing, and we celebrate that, because once you do something it doesn't quite work right, then you automatically have insights in how you do it better the next time. So this is our living lab. I'll just give you a little bit of some case studies about what we're doing at HKUST. As you can see, the entire campus is the living lab. Now, we can get away with that perhaps better than some of you may. If you are in a commercial building or in a hotel, you may not want to turn your entire footprint into a place of experimentation. But I do think that there are probably ways where you can test out new ideas and innovation. So you'll see that in this example, there are the pieces of grass, there's pieces of the buildings, there's steps. We have everything from the digital twin of the campus to facial recognition and so forth. So let me give you a couple, just very quickly, a couple of our projects that we're proud of. We have a great number of projects that are focused on energy efficiency. And energy efficiency, the one thing we believe that we should do first is go back to see how nature does it, because nature can operate in a very efficient way without batteries and without fuel and without any of the encumbrances that we have here. So if you look at the way that a tree operates, you'll notice that a tree can pull moisture from the ground all the way up to the very top of the tree without any kind of electricity or any other outside energy use. And how does it do that? Well, it uses the power of the sun and the absorption rates and pulls it up. If we design our buildings in a similar way, we can also be able to bring moisture levels from the bottom of the building all the way up through the top and have it evacuate in ways that mimic nature. So this idea of biomimicry can be a great example for how we move forward. So energy efficiency is great, but decarbonization is even better. We have to get the carbon out of the atmosphere altogether. So here, many of you have heard of biochar. We have a number of similar items that we're focusing on, but one of them is called hydrochar. It's a slightly different way of being able to use all kinds of waste, including food waste, translated into a pure carbon form that can be embedded into the soil, effectively burying that carbon so that it will be sequestered. And finally, as a university, we recognize that we have to train the students to be focused on how we move forward. As I mentioned, one of the three keys of moving forward in this vision is that we need to digitize everything, which means we need digital literate students. So what's one way to do that? Well, what we're doing is we're putting meters and sensors in all of the dorm rooms so that no matter what happens during the day, a student will be able to pull out their phone and see exactly how much energy they're using, not just in their dorm room, not just in their building, but they can see the electricity from the lighting, from the air conditioning, from the plug loads, and they'll be able to measure that compared to their peers and understand what kind of appliances are using more and what kind of appliances are using less, and becoming the kind of the digital natives that we'd like them to be. So if this is all the case, then what are the things that are holding us back? Because I think that we would all agree that we know that climate change is a big global challenge, and reaching net zero is going to be very difficult. If that's the case, then what are the things that are holding us back? In one of our earlier conversations, we were talking about a lot of the great technology that's already available, and you already heard some of the technology that's already available. So why aren't we already doing many of these things? Well, one of the things that I would suggest is that we have an inability to look at the broad system. We tend to focus on solving one problem at a time. And when we do that, we often miss out on the bigger opportunities that are out there. So I remember one of my students at one point said, what would happen if we completely moved to all EVs in Hong Kong? And I said, if the focus is on going to 100% electric vehicles, then we would go from a picture that looks like this to a picture that looks like this, right? Because we haven't solved the bigger problem. We haven't looked at the entire system. And so looking at that system is what we really need to be able to focus on. Secondly, I think that, again, I'm very glad to come after the Siemens talk, because one of the things that I was very struck with was the case study from Austria, and looking at the entire district as a way that all of the buildings and grounds and everything that's connected to it, including cars, I imagine, are part of the energy system. They're either dispatching energy, they're absorbing energy, they're creating energy. We can't do that with the kind of energy system that we have today here in Hong Kong. We have a traditional regulated utility system. But in order to really unlock the potential for things like what we just saw, we do need to disrupt that model just a bit and allow for innovators to come in and say, this district, we could do this in a very different way than the traditional model of having central electricity facilitators and having all of that electricity just pumped in the original way. And then finally, we need to think about what we need in Hong Kong and what we don't need in Hong Kong. We may need to make some difficult decisions because we know that it's going to be very difficult for us to decarbonize our entire electricity system. The best estimates are that we may be able to produce 15 to 20, maybe if you're ambitious, 25% of our total electricity by renewable energy here in Hong Kong without being dependent on electricity coming from the mainland. And of course, that's not very realistic either because they have their own decarbonization goals. It's very unlikely that they will generate renewable and then sell it to us. So if that's the case, then what are the largest consumers of electricity that we don't necessarily need to have here? So one example is data centers. We know that data is transmitted on fiber optic cables. The data center on the cloud could be anywhere that has an abundance of renewables, like Iceland or Australia. And so we may need to make some decisions about what are the kinds of energy consumption habits that we have here that we don't need. So with that in mind, I'll leave it there. I think the main three things that I'd like to leave you with are that we need to recognize what holds us back, we need to remove the barriers for innovation, and then, of course, prepare for disruption. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Burkhardt. Please take a seat on stage to join our first panel discussion. Before we move on to the panel discussion, I would like to remind our online participants to use the Q&A box if you have any questions to the panelists. For audience in the room, you may raise your hands and we will pass you the mic. Now, may I invite Engineer Dr. Shirley Zhou, APEC ESG Lead, CAPCO, to moderate this session. Engineer Dr. Zhou, over to you, please.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, everyone, people here and the audience online. Now, may I invite our panelists, Mr. Erdo Elfer, Davis, Sandra, hi, and Kenny. Erdo already gave us very good presentation, set the thing already. And Mr. Elfer present Siemens decarbonization commitment and also illustrate by example of the possible solution, innovative solutions to lead us to net zero by illustrating the examples, infrastructure, manufacturing, and mobility. Davis now show us UST, also my campus. So yeah, so prototype and the proof of concept also lead the discussion to here, why not? Why not we adopt actually technology? Yeah, so maybe I sit down. So COP27, I think the one takeaway from COP27 for majority of the organization here is UN actually published an integrity matters report. Actually urges corporates, financial institutions, cities, and regions. We need really to bring integrity to our net zero pledge, where I think innovative technology solutions plays a very, very important role here. So today in this section, very short, I only have 32 minutes now. So we'll try to discuss about the innovative applicable solution to Hong Kong. How can we make Hong Kong to achieve our target net zero? And maybe we look into a little deep at the corporate level. I think the audience will be even more interested how to adopt, why not, and how can we facilitate. Now, maybe I move to Ms. Sandra first. Now, I actually did my homework when I came here about your company name, Janus. So it's from the Roman god of Janus, which represents that beginnings, transition, and ending. So can you share with us IET, Janus, energy transition, and how you help cities, infrastructure, how you help conglomerates on their energy transition?
Okay, thank you very much, Shelley. First of all, very glad to be here. It was very inspiring, the introduction of your CEO, BEC, Charles, Helbert, Davis, very inspiring. This is the right place to be in this moment to discuss about this. About Janus Energy Transition, my company that is a joint venture with an Hong Kong company, Janus, you're correct. Janus was the god of transition. So we need actually to work now on a different way to change the world. Is a transition. We cannot just say, oh, we go all renewable straight away. We need to think about how it's going to be the right step forward. And we need to make use of all the technologies that actually we have. You see what Siemens is doing, it's fantastic. Digitalization is the tool that we need to leverage on. So our company is working on projects moving from coal to gas. Is a transition to improve. It's not the final solution. Our company is working on hybridization of power. Is working on projects for green ammonia through green hydrogen, for green fertilizers in India. So we're working on a lot of projects that are relevant energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is something that is fundamental, but is not the final goal. We need to decarbonize, we need to go to zero. So getting to be more efficient is not going to be the final step, the final target. So we work also a lot with investors. This is why actually today probably I'm representing Carbonless, that is a platform, is a fund that has been generated around possibility of investing in a sustainable way for introducing new technology for decarbonization. And just I would like to mention that Carbonless was present at COP27. They introduced a book that I'm one of the co-authors that is relevant, Decarbonizing Asia. That is the biggest challenge, I believe, in the next 50 years. So very glad to be here, and very glad to be with such kind of competent people to discuss about how we can give some good suggestions for Hong Kong. And we need to be very open. It's not a matter of criticizing or just the matter of trying to be too innovative. It is never too much innovation. We need to be very creative now, and this is a good kind of environment to be very honest and trying to put up some idea. Thanks.
Maybe I move to Kenny. Kenny, on the corporate level, on the solution provider level, in terms of innovative solution, I know PC have also very ambitious net zero commitment. So, please,
okay.
Kenny, please.
Thanks again for inviting me to be one of the panelists. Certainly, we have our own net zero target, but I'm afraid I'm not as aggressive as Siemens, which can achieve by 2030. But we are somehow in between Siemens and the Hong Kong government. The Hong Kong government, they pledged to have the net zero by 2050, and we are, HKPC, are actually pledging ourselves to be net zero by 2040 or even before, if it is possible. Actually, for us, we have been reducing our own carbon emission by roughly 50% since 2014, and by some of the innovative technologies of our own, and of course from some of our partners, technology partners from all around the world. And for us, being a semi-government organization, and we are all focusing in technology development and commercialization, and also in industry support organizations, we do have quite some decarbonization technologies actually for us and for many of our commercial and industrial partners and clients or so. Taking for the example of some of our innovations for following the Hong Kong government's 4 decarbonization strategies, in terms of the net zero electricity generation, we do of course provide some consultancy service for the 2 power companies in Hong Kong, and also we have been helping some of our clients to design and look for good renewable energy installations in Hong Kong and their factories in mainland China. For energy efficiency and green buildings, and two of our speakers has already said a lot. And we do have our own AI-based energy monitoring technology, although not as sophisticated as some of our colleagues here. But we did have our niche angle of helping some of our manufacturing-based clients in the Greater Bay Areas in monitoring some of their very sophisticated but energy-consuming production equipment, trying to look for any potential for improvement in a very precise way. I think that is one of the important things that we help our industrial clients to move forward. In terms of green transport also, some of you may have known that HAPC, we also host automotive platforms and application systems R&D centers for the Hong Kong government. In that, we do put some R&D efforts on commercial EV vehicles, commercial electric vehicles, EV charging systems, although I see the same picture that David just mentioned about whether it is really good to have EV. But we still think that still would be one of the good decarbonization strategies in the near term. And also we are also looking into hydrogen as well. For the last decarbonization strategy on waste reduction, it comes to my heart. And some of you may have known that I have been working for the government in helping them to shape their waste management policies, especially when I and Simon working together for the very recent public engagement on the control of single-use plastics. I think all in all, and this type of things help Hong Kong to move forward. And one other role that I have, in addition to research and development of technologies and consultancy for the government and private sector, we do operate some funding schemes on behalf of the government. And one of the fundings that I manage is the recycling fund. We do encourage the use of innovative technologies, especially green technologies, to help waste reduction and recycling. Within this particular recycling fund, we have devoted $100 million out of the $2 billion fund for the encouragement of the use of smart bins in residential estates for the collection of food waste and trying to connect it to the green dollars that the government provide, hoping to get some incentive for the residents, improve their awareness and trying to move waste from landfill. I think I just stop here and see, looking forward to some fruitful discussions, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra and Kenny. I'd like to structure the following discussion maybe into three parts. One, we need to really discuss not the current available solutions, but to stretch out to see what will be the innovative solutions, how to make the availability as well. The second is what about the barriers, and the last part about how we can recommend basically. Now for the first part, maybe this is to Mr. Alfred and Sandra. What do you think are the innovative solutions that? So how about Hong Kong? We have these 2030, 2015 goals, right? So what will be the solution availability and the innovative solutions that can help Hong Kong to drive this net zero? Or what do you think? Whether Hong Kong, can we achieve that, basically?
Okay. Well, I guess my mic is still on, right? So I use it. It's on. Oh. I keep it. Thank you. Well, we have the technologies. I have shared with you what is all available and what we can all do. And it's also great to see that Hong Kong set the targets, at least clear targets saying becoming carbon neutral by 2050. I am sometimes challenging this, saying why don't we do it a bit faster? The word acceleration, and also here I'm also asking this question, why we don't do it a bit faster. I believe it is possible. Once again, the innovations are there. Important from our perspective, also from our experiences, setting clear targets is one thing, but really consequently implementing is another thing. And here, it is in fact a joint forces. It is not only let's say, the authorities or government's responsibility, but also not only industry's responsibility. That is a joint forces. Again, governments needs to provide the proper framework which motivates and gives the relevant room, incentives, whatever we need to deploy the technologies. We as industry have to provide the technology, and we are working on and developing, continuously improving. If I look back what we had 5 years ago and what we have today, is a tremendous investment what we do to, again, help to drive the digital transformation, to optimize the things that begin save energy, and save energy but reduce CO2 emissions. But we as society also need to really see the necessity and also deploy those technologies. I am experiencing in different areas, be it in private areas, but also in industrial areas, there's so much room for improvement, so much room for optimizations. We are talking about green buildings, energy efficient buildings. I love your picture. You have seen, the talk and the walk. There's a huge gap. I fully agree. We can make the buildings much, much more energy efficient. The technologies are there. And we did, by the way. We have beautiful examples here in Hong Kong where my colleagues from building technologies are working to optimize it. But also in the infrastructure area, my colleagues from digital industry is working with our customers in harbor area or water treatment to optimize the operations to make them more energy efficient. But again, we need to really set our clear targets and implement it. And if we really implement, show it. And also share what is all possible. And also share, I have shown in my slides how much million tons each example has delivered. And if we show and share it more and more, I do believe there will be more people following us and helping to reduce the CO2 emissions.
If I can, maybe Sandra Elder, you can also, no, my question is, you talk about we have very clear target already. How about implementation? You talk about implementation, these words, right? I want you to compare Hong Kong with our neighbors, Singapore, Taiwan, whoever. So regarding the implementation. So then we know where we are, how we need to achieve, whether we need to do more and how to do that, right? So can you give us a very quick comparison with our neighbor cities? And what do you think in terms of implementation?
Well,
how good we are in Hong Kong?
I guess I am supposed to answer because I am living in both regions, Hong Kong and Taiwan. And yes, true. In terms of energy transition and improving energy mix, of course, this is very much dependent on where you are. And in Hong Kong, I know we have not much, let's say, resources related to renewables. But we have the technology also in the future to utilize, for example, hydrogen. My colleagues from Siemens Energy working on turbines which will run or which are running with hydrogen. So that is something where also the government has to prepare the infrastructure for it. In this term, yes, in Taiwan, there's a huge push to implement the renewables because Taiwan Straits provides a good resource for it. But in terms of implementation of building efficiency and others, we are not better there. I believe here we have more ambitions. I think we have similar issues in every region, but I think all are aware of we have to do more. We have to accelerate our activities to really reduce the CO2 emissions. And there's huge potential, I said, in every region. I'm not sure, maybe you have more experiences from.
Going on these specific topics. Let me give you an example about what is going on looking into Japan and Australia. Japan is a very interesting country because they decided to promote this green hydrogen society. But they don't have actually enough renewables, and they don't have actually what it takes to be green hydrogen producer in a scale and with a cost effectiveness that will make it to scale up. So they are actually trying to build up this kind of scale based on optimize the cost of electricity in Australia through renewables there, and then now they're going into the challenge of how you're going to transport it. right? So we're going to have hydrogen out of Australia, green hydrogen. Are we going to transport it out of Australia in Japan? Are we going to liquefy at minus 252 degrees? Big challenge. Are we going to use transformation in ammonia, green ammonia? So this is what is happening in this society, but not only. Japan actually is a very high consumption of coal for industrial production. And this is also because of the effect of the earthquake that actually demobilized the nuclear industry. And these guys in Japan, they have this issue that they are producing thanks to the fact that they are making use of huge amount of coal. This is very similar to what is happening here in Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, we sit on a 3 gigawatt coal-fired power plant that is going to be actually working for sure up to 2040. So we can talk about many things, but we are sitting on a big coal-fired plant, and that is CO2 emission is huge. And what I can see is that what they're doing in Japan now, just to launch an idea, they are making use of sustainable, certified biomass to blend with the coal in order to trying to provide a neutralization of the carbon emission. So the idea in this case is to provide new source from biomass certified, because of non-certified could be a greenwashing. Together with this, moving to another aspect, I can see that what is really changing now is that many countries and many big companies, conglomerates, they are now looking into building their own net zero roadmap, seriously. Not just a kind of ESG program just for advertisement. They are serious now into it. And we have the chance to work thanks to a cooperation we have with IET with BLS Energy Plan, a German company that has expertise in providing net zero mapping to utilities in Germany, in Europe, and in Asia, and also to the municipalities of Berlin. We have the chance to learn the method on how we can provide a solid net zero roadmap. So what I can see is that we need to be, on one side, providing some kind of innovative idea concerning what our neighbors are doing. On the other side, we need to approach the matter with a very solid method. Net zero road mapping is not something that is just paper. It's something that we need to take it seriously. And we have technology. Sorry, the last point. According to the International Energy Agency, of which I'm a fellow member, and that I consider one of the highest authority in terms of decarbonization, they put up a map about getting out of the carbonization, about net zero. And for them, it's quite clear that awareness is a very important point, right? And that the technology that we have now is good enough to get up to 2035. So we don't have to invent anything more. We have to optimize what we have. We have to use the platform, like Siemens developed a platform, Accelerator. We need to make use of it. Like Microsoft, they had Azure, and we need to optimize it. We don't need to invent many more things. So we already have many things that we need to go into the decarbonization. The very important point is that we need to drive it now. We need to drive it, and we need to be aware. And this is why it's important to be aware about it. Everybody needs to be aware about the fact that if you are into it, we need to work in the same direction, starting with the small things, working with the industry, investors. And so your last point. Charles, he was mentioning core, the establishment of a carbon credit market in Hong Kong. This is huge stuff, guys. This is where investors in Hong Kong, we have money here, we have money, we have investors, we have investor mentality. This is the way we can actually bring investors into having credit carbon kind of investment that are going to help to offset what we have here in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Mr. Elver. So if I can summarize a little bit, hydrogen, green energy, renewable energy, buildings, utility, biomass, awareness seems very on the municipal level. Now I want to bring back to corporate business. And according to recent BEC report, I think only 20% or 21% of the company corporate response said that, we are utilize the digital digitalization solutions for the ESG or net zero roadmap. So you can see the adoption rate is very low, just 21%. So the question to Kenny and Davis from corporate perspective, university or large corporate, right? So what do you think about the same question, the solution availability, or why not? Why only 21% of the adoption here in Hong Kong? I think you talk about a lot, like holistic views, old aging infrastructure, as well as we need to have the disruptive. But please elaborate a little bit on the barriers and why not. Yeah.
Okay, sure. There was an American writer named Mark Twain 100 years ago, was quoted as saying something like, I'm very supportive of progress, but I really don't like change. And he was getting at the idea that we are very conservative, generally speaking. We do resist change. Now, I don't think it's necessarily change, because we can accept change over time. If you got married, wow, that's a big one. Or if you have children, that is a huge change. So we can accept it. What I realized is that what we're really resistant to is uncertainty. Right? So why is the reason that there's only 20% of the companies that are employing this digitization? I think that there's some level of uncertainty. There may be some caution that maybe things could go wrong, maybe someone will get blamed, maybe something won't happen. We're seeing this in the feed-in tariff for renewables in Hong Kong. It's the most generous feed-in tariff in the world. It's incredibly generous. So we've completely removed any financial barriers to widespread adoption of renewables. And yet we still see a great hesitancy. When we did our very large renewables project on campus, the question I kept getting asked was, why don't we just do a little bit? Or why don't we let someone else go first? It's this fear of change. I'll give you just a very quick anecdote. I realized at one point, I've been working in universities for almost 20 years now, and at one point I realized that we kept getting this resistance from our design consultants when we were building new buildings or when we were renovating. And we were saying things like, sustainability is a very important part of us. We want to build this building in the most sustainable way possible. And we were getting very traditional designs back. And finally, one of the things I realized was that we were a very, very large customer in the city that I was in previously. And the consultants and the engineers and everyone across or down the line realized that if they did what we wanted them to do and really went on the cutting edge and gave us something that we were asking for, if it didn't work, they would get blamed for it, and it would be less likely that they would be awarded the next contract. And they weren't willing to take the chance, so they continued to give us traditional designs. It wasn't until we recognized that we went back to them and said, listen, we know that this is a little risky. We will assume the risk with you. If it works, we'll share the success. If it doesn't work, we'll take the blame. This was our idea. We pushed you in a way that we were looking for some very uncharted territory. And we will share the success together, or we'll take the blame if it doesn't go right. So I think the key is that we need to be looking at what are the things that prevent people from really being aggressive in focusing. We all agree. I think that same study said that 80% of corporations all say that they all recognize that greenhouse gas emissions are one of the largest challenges that we have, but only 20% are digitizing. So there's a big gap there, and so I think the key is we need to start systematically removing the risk factors that make it more difficult or that create the level of caution for people to move forward more aggressively.
Okay, maybe my turn. I certainly agree with David that people somehow doesn't want to change very rapidly, right? And for myself, I guess, firstly, I'm not surprised about that particular low percentage, as if my connection with many of our SME clients, they do have the impressions that the government is going to work on carbon neutrality. But the issue is, does it really matter with me right now, right here? I am an SME. I am fighting for survival, especially under the COVID era. I need to do first. I think these are all the issues, not to mention about the financial burdens, the technology levels that they are not fully aware, and all these kind of things. I think that is something that not just in Hong Kong, but in many areas around the world, except the government or somehow other big companies are really give a big push. So in my own opinion, if possible, somehow, somewhat like ESG, the big companies and big organizations have to give a push to encourage or actually to give a little bit flat of their suppliers or so. If you don't do it right now, you may still survive, but on the next contract also, like some other panelists has already mentioned, I'm going to put this into my contract on the requirements of whether you have some ESG disclosure, whether you have some roadmap also for carbon neutrality. From the SME side, I always talk to some of my contacts and clients that you better be prepared right now, so that you will increase or enhance your own competitiveness in the first place. The technologies is always be there. I fully agree with other panelists that the technologies are already good up to at least 2035. For the digitization part, just to monitor the energy usage, waste disposal, we do have good technology on hand. And we always use these two particular examples, trying to convince our clients and contacts that if you monitor your energy, if you monitor your waste, you will be able to reduce your costs in the first place. That could be some of the initial drivers that we can help them to move faster. Thank you.
Thank you. I only have 4 minutes to go before I open the floor for questions. So I give you, each of you, just one sentence if you recommend, no matter how how to adopt or facilitate adoption, no matter from business, no matter from government, just one sentence to what you want to recommend. Davis, this one.
Well, I recommend embracing disruption.
Okay.
That's a very short sentence.
Good.
Embrace disruption.
And
embrace the disruption.
And deploying the digital technologies. I make it short, but.
Okay.
And the partnership between government, private investor, and industry.
Okay.
Working together, making sure they have the same goal.
True. Start to change as soon as possible.
Thank you. Now, thank you very much for the very good summary of recommendation. I got actually a question from Mr. Elver, very interesting presentation on Siemens technology. But can Mr. Elver advise a percentage of the scope 3 in total greenhouse gas emission? Does net zero target 2030 also include those scope 3 emission? If not, what is the target to reduce this scope 3 emission by 2030 and beyond?
Yes.
So scope 3.
Yes. I didn't mention it explicitly. What I mentioned was scope 1 and 2, again by 2030. And our goal is to reduce scope 3 emissions by 20% by 2030. And our goal is to reduce, again, totally by 2050. And of course, our aim is to accelerate it. But as I have shared with you, the initiative, Sea Green, is one of the measures which we are taking, also to make it transparent, the emissions and the supply chain, which we believe is also as important as the scope 1 and 2.
Yeah, to add on that, I think they will talk about to take the responsibility, the risk, but then mainly from I think the big companies' perspective, I can say, right, when you have the purchase power, all these, do the tendering process. I can mention about the SME. A lot of SME actually is in big companies' scope 3 emission actually. So that is also an urge, an advocacy here. So for all the scope 1, scope 2, 3, your own value chain or SME's own value chain to contribute this net zero transition. Yeah. Now open the floor for questions.
Hello, I'm David Chan. I'm from Amo Solar. We are a solar investor and solar energy provider. I'm very pleased to see that solar panels have been shown as an icon that basically refer to as in renewable energy. I've got a couple of questions for Professor Brookhart basically mentioned this. There is a very low intake of FIT, feed-in tariff. It is strange. Hong Kong does have the highest rates. So basically, a solar panel installation, you get your return back in 2 or 3 years. This is incredible compared to the world. But yet, renewable energy in Hong Kong is 0.2%. Probably 99% of that is solar panel. And you have one windmill farm in Hong Kong. So what kind of things that we need to do to increase that? I mean, for instance, can we make everyone put solar panel on the roof? Can we relax the building regulations to make that happen? Can we allow land? I mean, there's loads of schemes where you can have solar panel and then you have farm underneath that. You can basically do two things with land. Can the government make some steps in those kind of areas? I would like to maybe also for Mr. Wong that this question: how do we bridge some of these gaps? We talk about innovations, new ideas, but there's quite a lot of existing technology, which is new. I mean, because this is the only things that is available, well, one of the few things that's available that we can do really quickly. If we can build 10% in renewable, then Hong Kong can make a very big impact that's. So a question, well, what can we do to improve this FIT?
Yeah, good question. I know we're almost out of time, but I can give you just a couple of different ideas. We are part of an 8-university consortium, and I think the thing that I keep hearing back from my colleagues is that they were happy that we went first so that they could learn a little bit and then move on. I think that anything like solar is new. I think one of the very practical suggestions is for the government to get much more aggressively involved in demonstrating the use of solar in buildings. For example, it would be very easy to change the building codes to mandate that solar be integrated into buildings. Right now you get credit if you're going for beam, but it's not required. The government could simply just say that at least 5% of your electricity consumption needs to come from renewables and solar. That's number one. Number two, the government has an incredible ability to showcase solar. And let me give you a couple of examples. In all of the reservoirs, we have a little demonstration pieces, but we demonstrate and then we stop. We're waiting for someone else to take it up from there. You could cover the reservoirs with solar. We have thousands of miles of highways and a large canopy over top of the highway. I think I calculated once that you would be generating, or you could create a capacity of about 1 megawatt of electricity for every 2 kilometers or something like that. It's an incredible amount. Railways, the space between the rails could be solar panels. You just, once you start to kind of break out of the mind that they have to go on top of a roof, you start to see opportunities everywhere for solar, and a lot of that is on government property. If the government would take on the opportunity, or if they would take the role of actually demonstrating, people would be much more comfortable with it, and then it would be a lot easier for people to adopt.
Mandating is one aspect, but supporting, encouraging is another aspect. I can share with you an example from Germany. If you build a house, you get financing support if you fulfill certain insulation criteria for energy saving, but also if you install solar panels, you get financing support. So that's something which motivates people, of course, to deploy those technologies.
Yes, the last question, the lady.
Thank you. Hello, Ji Xiao from Faith and Love Foundation. Thank you very much for the talk this morning. Very inspirational, very informative. My question is about something about population. So in the past 2 weeks, we reached a milestone of 8 billion on this, green-crested green and blue crested planet. And one of the reasons why we've reached 8 billion is because we've drastically improved life expectancy. And I think in Hong Kong, we are very proud to have one of the longest life expectancies in the world. In some ways, I guess it's a blessing and also a curse, because when we talk about innovation, it seems the older generation is much more affected by disruption, as Professor Burkhardt so animatedly talked about in his opening slide. So my question is, how do we move the older generation to embrace net zero? Because I think, as the panel has talked very vividly about, the case is clear, but for many people, especially SMEs and the older generation, they think there's a non-necessity, or they don't think it's anything to do with them. So how do we move this very significant part of our population?
Not an easy question. That is why nobody dares to start. But valid question. Valid question. Sharing examples from other regions where it's happening, showing the positive results of energy saving, of deploying new technologies, and communication. That is something which I see, but I admit it's not an easy topic.
Yeah, let me share something that is coming from my country. You know that Europe went through, and is still through, the big problem about the war in Ukraine. This generated insecurity. That is not a matter. Security about the supply of energy, right? This generated this kind of issue. This what actually has been generating a lot of awareness in young generation that before they were not used about having this kind of issue. We, maybe because we are older, we went through the crisis of the 70s and so on. So this crisis has been, under certain respect, very beneficial to make people understand that energy, that is the base of the fact that we live in a very sustainable and long-aging society, right? Because of, you see, the countries that actually have the longer expectancy life are the countries that have the biggest capacity. Hong Kong, 13 gigawatt for 8 million people, means that we spend energy very well. So awareness is what actually is generating is a kind of a switch in the mind of the young people. And together with somebody that is providing them the chance to understand that there is a roadmap, there is a chance, there is something that we can achieve. So this is why I'm very, very proud about what some, beside many of the big companies they're doing, but also International Energy Agency, they make clear, we have a map, we have a roadmap, we can do it, we can do it, we need to do this way. These two things, so the fact that energy, that decarbonization is a must, and that is something that is achievable, is something that maybe is going to help young generation to get through it. Yes. Difficult task.
This is a very good question. Maybe I wrap up this section by saying awareness and the capacity building we haven't discussed here in much detail at a much detail level. However, maybe no chance to say. David teach at UST. I also teach at UST. Capacity building not only for the university students. We are talking about the capacity building awareness training at the different levels. So it's to the whole ecosystem, all the participants in terms of capacity building, because not only people understand why and the what and the how, then people know and how to adopt. So with that, thank you very much, the panelists and all the audience. Thank you very much. Enjoy the event.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Dr. Zhou, and our speakers for the insightful discussions.